Welcome back to Finance with Fakhruddin. Before we get started with the show, we would like to shout out our sponsor, Masjid Express. Ever worry about not being able to make masjid in time for one of the required prayers? Because as a fellow practitioner of Islam myself, I know I sure have. Perhaps the Ummah is having a celebration, but you are not able to attend. Do not fret, Habibi. Masjid Express connects you to all masjids in a local area via Zoom technologies, ensuring you do not miss any important dates or celebrations. Well, on that note, why don't we get right into today's segment, in which we'll be talking about Iran.
Gender equality is more than a moral issue, it is a vital economic issue. For the global economy to reach its potential, we need to create conditions in which all women can reach their potential, says the former IMF economic counselor Maurice Obstfeld. Many theoretical contributions have proposed that gender inequality may hinder economic development. A study was conducted where economic scientists plotted GDP per capita growth against the Gender Inequality Index and showed that the two variables are negatively correlated, meaning the higher the index score, the lower the GDP. We believe that higher gender equality should benefit industries with a greater share of women, and it may support economic growth. High developments on the gender inequality front are predicted to entail a large reduction of frictions on the demand and supply side of labor. In other words, more productivity is possible with gender equality and would result in an outward shift in the PPC curve. Findings suggest that industries with a typically greater share of women in their employment compared to others grow relatively faster. So, why is all this important? Well, in many places, specifically Iran, gender inequality is prominent. The GDP per capita in Iran is approximately $2,756, whereas in a country with a more balanced labor force, such as Sweden, it is almost 20 times as much as Iran. Although there are many factors as to why there is a much less GDP in Iran than a highly developed country like Sweden, it is proven that gender inequality results in a lower GDP per capita. Only a small percentage of women in Iran are a part of its labor force, and if they bring that number up, it will bolster their economy.
Next, we have our distinguished mathematician and Professor Emeritus of Hustlers University, Mr. Topji Derivative, sharing his expertise on women's inability to participate in the economy and its effects.
Women not participating in the workforce lowers the potential output of an economy because the overall population that is available for labor is cut in half. Now you can only have 50% the production you might once have had.
Very wise words, I might say, from Mr. Topji. Nothing less expected from a noble like himself. Well, into our next segue, I'd like to draw conclusions from what our expert and fellow podcaster Swarit have talked about. And this actually has to do with one of Iran's greatest issues.
Well, what might that be?
Iran has an exceeding rate of terrorism. This is proven by the fact that they rank in the top 30 nations amongst the Global Terrorism Index. Terrorism has quite a direct impact on the way Iran's economy has progressed.
You mean to say declined?
Oh yes, sorry. Currently, Iran is one of the largest state sponsors of terror in the entire world. So let's take a little more of a deeper dive into why this is negatively impacting Iran's economy. Well, if we're discussing about terrorism, we might as well start at the root of it. Professor of Economics at the New School University brings up not only the direct effects of the economy on terrorism, but as well as the indirect, bringing up the cost of guns and other infrastructure to run such terrorist groups, and as well as the impacts on GDP due to tourism. Iran's tourism has consistently been one of the major growth prospects, providing an increase to the GDP. In Iran's future, the entry of 20 million international tourists, US 36 billion tourist receipts has been targeted by 2027. But my beliefs are quite opposite from these derived macro models. If terrorism continues to expand the way it is, in Iran, we may never see tourism flourish as predicted. Not only does tourism itself directly increase the GDP, but also provides jobs to millions of people in Iran. The current 11% unemployment rate of Iran may decrease as low as 6%, some experts from the Department of Economics in Iran, such as Fateh Habibi, say. Again, we may never know if these values hold true if the current state of terrorism in Iran does not decrease. Well, according to what we have talked about, we can now come to a fair conclusion, which is terrorism and gender inequality both have negative impacts on Iran's GDP, one leading to another. Thank you, Mr. Topji Derivative, for joining us on this episode, and that's it for Finance with Fakhruddin. Have a good night, everybody, and Alhamdulillah.